did find succour was over the border in Iraq under Saddam. I mean, that's
simply not true.
No, it is true.
It's not true. I mean,
I'm afraid it is.
I mean, it's ludicrous.
He didn't do it because he supports feminism. He did it because he was against Iran, and he saw that these people could make trouble for Iran.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to build up Saddam Hussein as a feminist hero, I give up.
Of course I'm not.
I give up.
No, of course I'm not. What I'm saying to you is that people do things for odd reasons.
Yeah.
And just because a certain group believes that you can help them by going down a certain route and showing solidarity in a certain way, doesn't mean that they are right in their belief.
Well,
just because they want it doesn't mean that it's right.
It doesn't
mean that it's the correct way forward. I mean, it has been a disaster for Iraq.
Okay.
The war.
It does mean that you have to admit their existence, treat them as equals. Even if you disagree with them, you have to argue with them with some mutual respect, and not just wipe them off the pages. And as I say, what's interesting about Britain is you get that far more, and indeed in Europe, you get that far more in the sadly dwindling remnants of the trade union movement than you do among the liberal mainstream. Not just the intelligentsia, but the Liberal Democrats, who, for perfectly good reasons, might say, we want British troops out of Iraq now, never feel the need to say, well, we've spoken to people in Iraq who would share some of our values of liberalism, and even they disagree. We talked, and no one ever asked them. I mean, Sir Mingus Campbell is never asked about this. Well, why does your liberal democracy stop at the borders of Fortress Europe? Why can't you extend, but not even do, as you say? No one's under any compulsion to do what other people ask them to do. But if you claim to be a liberal, a Democrat, a socialist, a feminist, living in a very comfortable country, I would say you descend into a sort of very selfish relativism if you don't at least talk to those who share your values and are suffering more than beyond the tragedies of everyday life, more than you can possibly imagine.
Well, I don't think anybody would disagree with that, and I don't think that actually happened. I don't.
What do you mean? It's just not happened at all. I mean, it's very, very odd. It's very odd writing this book, and you bring it out, and people.
Only 2 chapters of which were concerned with this. Of
course. Well, but the rest of it is about what happens when socialism dies. What happens when postmodern relativism takes over? What's happened to middle-class intelligentsia? Why does it feel so odd at the moment, so insecure at the moment? There's lots of other things in there. But, you bring out a book, and then suddenly you get this great wailing and fluttering of tutus from your colleagues saying, oh, it's just the far left who've done this. From people who have never themselves criticised the far left at all. You can go back through the BBC. I went on the BBC the other day and said, well, everyone knows this. I said, don't bloody listen to the BBC, mate. I mean, BBC has never covered what's going on in the East End of London, of how white Trotskyists and Jamaati Islami are falling in alliance, and just how bizarre this is, and how weird this is in 20th century terms, that you really have to go back to the time of the Hitler-Stalin Pact to find anything like that. And then they suddenly say, oh, well, it's nothing to do with us. Well, if it's nothing to do with you, why don't you report it? Why don't you argue about it? Why didn't you just say, look, this is terrible? Isn't this terrible, the way, probably doomed, incidentally, liberals and socialists in the Arab and Kurdish world, they're probably finished. I think Al-Qaeda was one in Iraq. But, isn't it terrible the way everyone's ignoring? Well, yeah. When did you do something about it? Show me your cuttings. Show me your broadcast.
It's again.
You have got some evidence, Deborah.
Sorry.
You need some evidence.
Some evidence of what?
To support your contention that everyone's been behaving fine, and they've all, of course, been talking to people in the Middle East who share their values.
I accept that the media can be reductionist, but I would suggest that your own book is extremely reductionist in many ways as well. You talk about Islamic fundamentalism all the time without really seeming to understand that this is far from representative of what most Muslims believe and what the general trend among Western Muslims is. I mean, you're in danger of caricaturing vast, a fifth of the world's population yourself, and that's a really
well, I hope I don't.
Dangerous thing.
It would be a dangerous thing. In fact, the first line of the Runnymede Trust's definition of Islamophobia. I mean, some people who don't like Islamophobia at all think it's ridiculous to say you can't, criticism of religion is a kind of racism, which I agree with. But there is, I certainly know such thing as Islamophobia, as is irrational hatred of people for being Muslims. But again, Deborah, I would ask you to point to where in my book I do that. I'm always very careful to say I'm talking about Muslim Brotherhood, or if I'm talking about the religious right, or indeed far right, I'm talking about Muslim Brotherhood or Jamaat-e-Islam. I never just say. I mean, one place I talk about. Whenever people say the Muslims, I write, in Bosnia, when I'm talking about Bosnia, I say it was the use of the way people, not so much the media, politicians, media as well, portrayed the Bosnian conflicts between the Serbs, the Croats, and then the Muslims, was a ridiculous attempt to reduce very complicated Bosnian society down to a sort of religio-ethnic group. I'm always critical of that. I mean, I don't think anywhere in that book, unless I've made a terrible mistake on page 93, do I say that?
Okay, one of the people that you are quite disapproving of within your book is Robert Fisk. Do you believe that he didn't talk to Iraqis?
No.
Didn't have a connection with
Fisk,
what people in the ground wanted?
Right.
Is that why he made the mistake of not supporting the war, do you think?
No. Look, this is not a pro-war book, Deborah. It's a book which, in its second half, uses the war in Iraq as a kind of, I said it shows up deeper faults and subterranean currents among mainstream liberal thinking.
Let's just run through what those are.
Well, it'll take you a bit. But we'll do with this first. I mean, it's very hard lifting. This book is written as a narrative. It's written as it's a book. It's not a political pamphlet or whatever. So I do a chapter on the reaction after 9/11. With poor old Fisk, all I do is just give a couple of paragraphs about the origin of fisking, which is an internet term for the systematic demolition of an article piece by piece. And this comes out after 9/11 with a sort of leftist apologetics for bin Laden. And there's only 2 parts on Fisk. It was just a piece he wrote on. It was just to explain how fisking comes about. There's no great attack on him.
Do you admire his reporting of the war?
I don't trust it, no.
So there we are.
But I mean, that's not in the book. I've known Fisk. Well, I've known because I was on the Independence, and I take what he says with a pinch of salt.
But do you believe that he didn't speak to Iraqis before deciding to oppose the war?
No, I don't at all. But you wanted to know about the reasons for why I thought things were.
I'd quite like to know what the other pieces of dreadful malaise that the left is now collapsing under are.
Right. Well, as I say, it will take some time, Deborah. If you look, let's take it away from Iraq. Here's my problem. Suppose, God forbid, a bomb goes off on the tube tonight on your way home. There's a missed bomb. I think any fair-minded person in this room would expect to get back home, turn on the radio, turn on the television, or pick up papers in the morning, and expect to see liberal-minded people, or hear liberal-minded people, blaming Tony Blair and turning their eyes from an ideology which is misogynist, homophobic, psychopathic, and wants to establish...
What ideology is that?
Well, Islamist ideology.
Sorry?
The Islamist extreme right. And wants to establish a totalitarian empire. That's what motivates the Islamist extreme right. And think they're very left-wing when they're doing it, and how weird that is. and how is